Hey everyone! Welcome to the Fishbowl podcast. I'm Sydney.
And I'm Brooke.
And today we are going to be talking about finding healing.
Let's dive in together. All right.
Oh my
We are
goodness.
so glad to be back.
We are so back too.
We are so back.
It feels so good to be recording today.
In fact, where are we right now?
Our recording studio looks a little bit different right now. What is this called that we're in?
We are in a craft room at the University of Florida.
In Brooke's sorority house.
Yes, Sydney came to visit me this weekend. We're having a little sisters weekend, but we're finally back together and reunited so we can record this episode.
Yes, I feel like we needed this, like a sisters weekend, like just to
100%.
be together. And usually for me, refreshing is like probably being home and not talking to anyone, but this has been so refreshing because I never got like a true college like experience, and like I never lived away at college, but as you guys know, Brooke currently is living away at college, and so I got to come up and stay with her and like go to the football game, and we just did all kinds of like fun little sister things together.
It's a whole new world, and
I
hope you liked it. Maybe you're like, I'm so glad I never
It is like so much fun. No, it's like perfect. It's like the 48 hours of everything I never had living at college all squeezed into one.
Crammed in my twin size bed.
Yes, and we've been staying up really late, but not doing what probably normal college kids are doing, like doing like
watching TV, making TikToks,
making so many TikToks,
all of the things.
Yes, and just eating late night snacks at like 1 a.m.
No, for real.
Like, yeah. But anyways, we wanted to get an episode out to you guys. Honestly, it's been like really hard to even think about recording right now with some stuff that like we've been going through, our church has been going through, and just a lot of others, and I feel like we haven't been in a place where we can like pour out right now.
Definitely.
I don't think I'm still really in a place, but it's good to like talk, I think
definitely the thing about this episode is we're not experts with this kind of topic, but we are going through it right now. We've been going through it for several weeks now, but we're still going through it, and so the purpose of this is to just share with you like where we are and things that have kind of helped us so that we can help anybody out there who is going through a healing process or grieving or things like that.
I think we're going through like a little bit of all the above that you mentioned, and I do think finding healing is more than just, I think I'm realizing this now, it's more than just like if something big happens. Like I don't think I've learned to properly heal and grieve like little things that happen. Like it doesn't just have to be losing someone, but it can be like losing what you used to know, like grieving changes that are happening, and that's something like I never thought about. And so I'm really glad that I'm starting to like learn how to go through that.
Right. You can grieve like a friendship, you can grieve a future that you thought you had with someone, you can grieve like the idea of someone, like all kinds of things.
I feel like a lot of like heavy things all happened in 1 week for both of us, like separately, like with separate different things, but then also with our church, and then also with our community. Like we just had that really bad hurricane that came through and just like has devastated so many people in our community. And then like just it's crazy like how each of us are going through things in a wider spectrum, like
just like back
in
to
like
back,
a month.
Back to back. My therapist is having a field day right now.
Oh my god. She's like, wait, please insert your card. I think you need. Sorry.
She's like, no, not. But it's like there's a lot that I'm trying to work through right now, and so it's like been one thing after the other, and just trying to heal from everything like separately, like in its own thing, but also just all together, just the kind of month that it's been. We just wanted to share with you guys some points. There's gonna be 3 main points that we want to talk through, and then just kind of share about our own experiences.
I just love this verse. My dad shared it recently when he was sharing with our staff team, because we've been going through some like this same process together, and he shared this verse, which you may have heard before. 2 Corinthians 4:8 says, "We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair." In another verse, or another like translation of this says, "Pressed down, but not destroyed." And I just like, I love that, because it kind of, in a perfect way, sums up like what you're feeling. Like you feel like you're being like stretched, but you know you're not broken. And yeah, I did like the word perplexed. Like perplexed is like such a good word.
Right.
Like
I think like especially in this kind of season that we're in, we're just kind of like, I think there is a lot of confusion and a lot of like wondering of.
But the verse is almost like a promise, holding on to like that though we are afflicted in every way, God still got us, and he's not gonna let us break. And I felt that so much this past month. I think my faith is like even stronger, because I'm like, God, I don't know how I can handle this on my own. And then it's like something else comes my way and I'm like, oh my gosh, but then God just gives me the strength to get through it.
Yeah.
And just the next week comes and God gives me the strength to get through it.
Right. I can remember just like sitting in my room being like, I can't take like one more hit. Like I feel so just like brought down.
Brooke, have you ever like felt like your circumstances are just like wild and like no one can relate, and then you read Job?
Oh my gosh. Job.
The book of Job.
It always goes back to Job.
Like I do remember reading it recently and I was just like, oh my word.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Job had it way worse. Not that like our problems are less significant, but I'm like, if Job can do it, if God can bring Job out of it, he's got me. He's got me.
It's gonna be okay. Yeah. Another thing is like looking at the story of Job, something that we took out of it is that he was very honest with God. Like he told God exactly how he felt. And the thing is like, God knows the desires of our heart. He knows our hearts so well that it's like he wants us to come to him and like tell him what's going on and just like talk through that. Like we don't have to feel like we can't go to God and tell him how we feel. Like Job is the prime example of that.
And like feel like we have to hide our emotions from God as well, which I think is something that I've learned like later on in life, that like I can be emotional with God. I can ask him questions, knowing that I may not get an answer from it now, but knowing that he can empathize with us and that he does hurt with us.
Yeah, like God has emotions.
Yeah, it's really cool. Well, you were talking a little bit about getting therapy, right? How has that helped you through this time?
I mean, that has been like crucial to this time for me. I would just really encourage everyone to seek out therapy. From like I go to a Christian counseling place, and it has just been like so life-changing for me, just hearing that third-party perspective and just like somebody who's a professional and able to walk me through these kinds of things. Because another thing is like I don't live with my family right now, and my family is usually who I lean on, and like I still can, but having somebody here like locally that I can talk to about that is so helpful, because it is hard, kind of like how you were saying, like sometimes you're in a position and you feel like nobody knows like what's going on around you. So having that like safe place to be like, hey, this is where I'm at this week, and like this is how I'm feeling. Maybe some weeks I'm like I'm doing so much better, and the next week I'm like I'm not doing good. Like but just somebody who can like meet you where you are and just point you back to God is so helpful.
Which that is our first point, is to accept help from others. I've also been going to like counseling at different points in my life, and I think I like had a misconception that it was like for people who've gone through a lot of trauma, but it really is good just to talk to someone, like a third party. I feel like sometimes it's hard like to talk to certain like friends that maybe go to your church if there's stuff going on, because you don't want to taint their view of church in general when maybe stuff is happening, or like if you're struggling with something with your parents, like it's hard to go to like a youth leader and say that and hope that they're not like judging your parents or like your church for something because your dad like leads the church. And so I feel like it's always hard to like find that balance of like, who do I talk to about this? In therapy, you're literally paying them to not tell. They don't tell anyone, which is really nice. But then it's also just like a third perspective. I think we really have leaned on to our parents as well for advice, but I also know like they're in a time right now where they're healing, and so like they also need that space. Not that I can't go to them. I know that I can go to them, but like it's hard when we're all kind of in this healing journey together. So yeah, counseling has helped. I really, really recommend it. Even friends, though, people who aren't maybe involved in your ministry but are Christian, that is definitely really helpful as well. Having other PK friends like this podcast, or just like a network of people that you can go to and say, hey, I'm going through this, you know, how did you navigate that?
Yeah, kind of like another thing for me is just, as a pastor's kid, I don't really feel like I can just open up well to anyone. So it has taken me a long time to like find that like trusted godly friendship where I know like I can talk to them without it going anywhere or without being judged. So that definitely does not come natural for me. And so I've really been working on this, and I'm still working on it. But just like push myself, because like that's not really a natural thing for me to just like be able to open up to someone very deeply. But it's definitely something that I've been trying to work on, and just like once I found that safe like godly friendship, encouraging myself to open up to them, or just like be real and be authentic and genuine, because like we said in another podcast, nobody relates to perfection.
Yeah, that's very true.
Full circle.
I know. And we may have said this in our other podcast, but even people are like, hey, how are you? And so saying like, oh, I'm good. Like recently I've been learning to say when I'm not good, like say, you know, I'm not good. I could use prayer right now. And they don't have to know exactly what you're going through, but letting people know that you are human and have emotion as well. So yeah, the first step, accepting help from others, and verbalizing it.
Okay, our next point is heal well, not quick. Boom. So, hot take, Sydney.
Okay.
I really feel like time does not heal all wounds. And I know that, like, we hear that a lot, like, oh, like, time heals everything. And, like, I've said that before, like,
I can tell you what, you can have a thing where something happens and then years later, and when you think about it or something triggers it, you can feel like you're right back there.
Exactly.
Like your brain literally thinks that you're in that moment. Like, like the chemicals in your brain can make yourself feel like you're there, which is something my counselor was telling me recently as well.
Yeah, this is something me and my counselor are talking about. We're not sponsored by therapy, guys. But you can sponsor us. But yeah, we were just talking about how, of course, healing is not linear, but I definitely think that, like, going back to the whole time conception, like, again, you could be doing great for months, and then, like, you could be like, hey, I'm not doing so good. I feel like, I told my therapist, like, I feel like I'm getting worse. And she just reminded me that it's not linear, and just because you might have, like, a bad day or a bad week or a bad season with it, like, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way. And she just told me, like, it's important to deal with that now. Like, okay, we're gonna pause wherever we were on our, like, process, and we're going to, like, work through this right now, because that's where you are. So I would just encourage you to, like, heal in a quality way. If you're feeling like something is coming back up again, like, pause. It's okay to accept that you're having a bad moment with it, and just work through it right then and there, because pushing that aside is not going to do any good. And you may have heard before, but there are like 5 stages of grief. And they refer to this a lot, like when you lost someone in your life, which I've been learning about a lot, but also I think that it's something that you can experience, like, in the loss of a friendship. And we shared this a little earlier, but like the loss of a friendship, you go through this, which we've had. And in ministry, things are always changing. You know, people can come in and out, and so you kind of have to grieve that as well. And so the 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I can say, like, I think
every day is different for me now.
Sometimes I feel like I'm in like 2 stages at once.
Yeah.
Like,
and I asked my counselor, I was like, but like if you get to the acceptance, like, because I felt like one day I was like, I do feel good, but like then like I found myself angry again or like depressed, and I was like, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm like going backwards? But it doesn't mean that. Like you're saying, like it's all a part of the process, and my brain may have accepted it, but then something triggered me to like go back to like that moment.
Right.
And it made me think, okay, it's something I need to work on. Also, in the moment, you can feel like that you're healed because maybe after a few weeks you feel like, okay, I'm past this. You know, you had the adrenaline going and your brain feels like maybe it's slowed down. But at some point you have an adrenaline crash. Like your brain goes into this fight or flight mode.
Right.
And the adrenaline can carry you through, but at some point when that crashes, you're left with parts that weren't actually healed, and it could be like fake healing, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you?
Right.
Dad was like explaining this, how it kind of works, but like in the moment you'll have adrenaline when you're going through something, and then like in a few months that's gonna wear off, and like you're gonna be left with some of the pieces that you still have to work through.
Yeah.
And if you don't work through it now, it's gonna like leave you with more of a mess later on.
Yeah. So if you don't heal well, it's only going to keep yourself from experiencing what God has for you.
Yeah. Have you had like a moment in your life where you've experienced something and then like it's come back up later on because you never fully like healed from it?
Yeah, you get like a flashback or like a trigger.
Yes.
And I'm like, wait, I thought I was past this. Like this was years ago. It doesn't matter. And or like I try to tell myself, I literally gaslight myself in denial. Like, Brooke, like this is silly. Like this was so long ago. It's so unimportant right now.
Yeah.
Yada yada yada. But it's like that is keeping you from so much. Just like dismissing the issue can keep you from what God has in store for you.
Yeah, I'm definitely more of like I'm gonna push this off and like just try not to think about it, ignore that it exists, and then maybe like my brain will just like forget, and I can move on with my life.
Yeah.
Like, if I just don't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
So I'm currently doing, it's called the Bible Recap, and like you read through like every day like the Bible chronologically, and I'm going really slow because I think in another podcast I said I was in Exodus. And no, I was in Numbers. I don't know where I was.
Yeah, Numbers.
Anyways, yeah, I think I haven't progressed much after that, but I have still been reading it, just not like every single day. But I'm still reading where the Israelites are in the desert. And it's like so annoying because I'm getting like a day-by-day synopsis where they're getting like 10, 12 years in between each gap. And it's like every day it's like, they're like, oh, we're going back to our old ways. Or they're like, we think our way is better, or they like forget it. They literally forget what happens, and God has to remind them and tell them, do you see what like I brought you through? How can you forget like this and want to go back to like what you had before, like romanticizing like the past or the trauma? They literally say in there like, why can't we just like go back to being like slaves? And it's like they're romanticizing like the worst parts of their life. And anyways, but because it seems easier, it seems like a comfort. Yes, it seems like comfortable, a safe place where you've been before. But the reality is, because they haven't healed well, they're not allowing God to move them forward, and so that's why they stayed in the desert so long, because they weren't healing from their past, and then God wasn't going to take them to the promised land yet. And I think sometimes there is something God's trying to show us through this, and something he's trying to work in our lives. And he's like, he can't show us a promised land until we are ready in our spirit to receive it. Right. And even it goes back to like our childhood. We're talking about trauma and how like there's these cycles of things even the Israelites had, where like the new generation would come in and just go back to their old habits. Yeah. And I do think like the more trauma that you have in your childhood, it does take longer to heal. Yeah. I think that, I know you were saying like it's not linear, and I don't think so at all. I mean, I think that's true. Like it's not linear, but also if you have a trauma that's being like directly triggered, like you need to pay attention to that and know that it might just take you a little bit longer than someone who doesn't have that same trauma.
Yeah, again, like you have to put in the work, like going off of the childhood trauma, like you were talking about, like, again, prime example, time does not heal everything. Like, work and seeking out healing and going to God and getting help from others, like that takes hard work, and that can heal your wounds. But it's not just like time passing that's going to heal it, because things come back up, and like you have to put in that work.
The Israelites, like they could have been the promised land so much sooner, but because they would not heal from their wounds, they just had to keep going back and going back.
Yes. Quality over quantity.
Yes.
Okay.
True. Last but not least, we have our third point. And our third point is stop asking why.
I'm so good at asking why. Like, why?
It's like a 2-year-old, but why?
But why, yes.
Why? But why?
I'm definitely guilty of asking those kinds of questions.
When you ask why, I think like it kind of contradicts a little bit what we were saying at first of like talking to God, sharing your emotions, and you should ask God why. You should like ask him questions. He wants to hear your heart. But after time has passed in your healing, if you keep asking why and going back, like it's not going to move you forward.
So a verse I wanted to share is from 1 Corinthians 13:12, and it says, "For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known." Wow. I feel like that verse is perfectly describing how I'm feeling right now. Like, I don't see the full picture. I see very, like, blurred of, like, what's going on, why is this happening, and, like...
I do feel, like, a weird peace. Not weird, but, like, I know it's from God. Like, God is giving me peace about, like, things that are going on, and that, like, I know it's going to be okay. And, like, I know God's going to take what's happened and use it for good in so many different aspects of my life. But I also can't help but sometimes ask, like, why? Like, why is this happening? Like, did it have to happen? And at different points in my life, I have. And, like, why couldn't it have just, like, been the same?
Right.
But I guess at some point when you're in the healing journey, you have to just accept that for whatever reason, you're not going to see the full picture right now on this side of eternity. God has a purpose for it, and you have to move on. I know that my dad was telling our staff, and there's been a few different times these past few weeks, like especially even with the hurricane that just came through, our team had like a meeting, and they said, we were like, hey, like we have a lot of damage in our area, and we took time to like clean up in our community, but they were like, we still have people that don't know Jesus in our community. We still have a weekend coming up. Yeah. And we're still going to have church. And so, yeah, we could say, like, well, why is this happening? Why did this happen to me? But it's like, okay, church is still happening. And there are people that are going to get to know Jesus this weekend. So if we let this stop us, all of the questions and the this and that about things, like, we're not going to have ourselves fully focused on what God can do. Yeah. And I think ministry is fast moving too. Yeah. So it can be where you're like, you feel like you accepted something or you feel like something happened to you, but then like the weekend's coming. And for me, I like have to be around a lot of people, like answering questions, and it's like I don't even fully get to process and heal myself, and now I have people coming to me that I have to like help walk through something that I don't even have the answers for them.
Right. Yeah, definitely going off of what you said, like we don't have all the answers right now, and maybe we will one day, or maybe we won't until we're in eternity and see clearly. But something that like I've had to learn is that we have to face the future with courage. And like, yeah, I'm not always good at this. Like there are times where I'm like, I don't want to face the future. Like I just want to sit in this hole I'm in and just like dissociate.
I'm like glass. Do you think you're glass half full or glass half empty?
Oh gosh, depends on the day.
Depends on the day.
Depends on the day and like who I'm with. I feel like
glass half empty for me mostly. Really? Yeah.
Like, I would not see that for you.
Really? You think I'm optimistic? I'm pretty realistic with things.
I don't know.
Like. I don't know. Maybe it depends.
I think it does.
Okay. Anyways.
But a really good verse that this reminded me of is 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. It says, "But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. That is so, so good. And it's just like, to me, it's a reminder, because I know for us, like, as pastors' kids, we still have a calling on our life to spread the word of God. And same for anybody in ministry or people who believe in Christ. Like, we have this calling to share the gospel, and like, regardless of our circumstances, like, that calling doesn't change. And that is something that is consistent, that I have to lean on when I don't know what's going on, things are up and down. Like, that is a consistent calling on my life, and I have to face that future and be like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but I know that this is what I have to do, and so I have to be courageous about this right now.
And I think people watch and they want to see how you handle when you go through this.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know when, like, we were going through some things, like, you were sharing with some of your people that were close to you, like, hey, this happened to me.
Yeah.
And people that knew you were a Christian, and so they're probably watching you here and seeing, like, how do you handle this? I know people are watching our church while we're going through this to see how do we handle it, because, I mean, I don't even know the right way to handle certain things when you're healing, but I know that God, leaning into God and knowing, like, I'm doing this, I have this calling on my life, and if I'm going to do this, it will further the kingdom of God. And so it's hard because we're not called to be comfortable here, and yes, we love our lives and we love to be comfortable, but like, this isn't our home, and so we can't let ourselves be held back from doing what God has for us.
Yeah, it's just gonna keep like building up this bitterness and resentment and questions, and it's like, that's exactly what the enemy wants. Like, he would love that.
He wants us to sit back. He wants us to not do anything. He's hoping that this situation that you're going through keeps you from pursuing God. And I can see that so clearly. Yeah. That I am like, I want to look him in the face and be like, well, I'm going to be pursuing God even more now.
Yeah, because
I'm not giving you a foothold. No footholds here.
Sir. I'm strong-minded. That's not happening on my watch. But.
Like, you thought you could do this, and we wouldn't think it was you, but we see you. So, I mean, I thought those were pretty good points.
Yeah, 3 big points. Yes. Let's recap really quick.
Okay, yeah.
First one, accept help from others.
Yes. Number 2 is heal well, not quick.
And lastly, stop asking why. So, if you have any more questions about this topic or anything you want us to talk about further in regards to healing, like, we would love to touch on that and share more, just let us know through the link in our link tree.
Yeah, and I can't say that we have all the answers. Again, like, I think that's always our disclaimer. Like, we're literally going through this, like, at the moment, and just wanted to be transparent and share where we're at. And hopefully this helps someone else feel not alone right now. Thank you guys so much for being faithful and listening. We will have new episodes coming your way shortly.
We'll see you next time
in the Fishbowl.